If you've got a remote team and some of your team are not quite performing, sometimes it's a people issue, but other times it's something to do with the tech that your team have in their setup. Let's dive into how you can make sure your team have the right tech tools to be productive at home. Our work has changed, and when we, in the past, used to use servers or just connected to a server to do most of our thinking, or the computer was doing most of the hard work on the local computer, that was the old way of working. The new way of working is in the cloud, and everything is in the browser. And for many people, we've switched to using more consumerized devices. People are now using Macs that they bought at home and sometimes bringing those to work, or maybe you've got company-wide computers that you want to roll out to your team, but you're needing to make decisions on how those are going to work. The landscape has changed though, because, in the past where everything kind of ran on the desktop, now we're running things in the cloud, but we still need quite a bit of computer power to actually work efficiently. Why is that? Because most of us are using Google Chrome, it hogs a lot of RAM, and most of us have many tabs open because we're in this kind of ADHD, work on a million things at once kind of work. Well, I know that I am as a business owner. Maybe you have a similar experience. I want to take you through how we approach setting up a standard environment for our team and a standard environment for our staff. And being someone that's advised business owners and teams on technology for a long time, I want to share with you some of the ways that I think about and approach making hardware decisions for people in the business. Now, if you're a business owner, you're probably just going to Apple or even bought a Microsoft machine, and you're probably just buying a whiz-bang machine for yourself, so you don't have to worry about any potential slowdowns or holdups in power. But for your team, you don't necessarily need to go and buy the top of the line best computer for every single person in your organization, because it may be overkill. So let's have a look at how we think about the different levels and the different access to technology that different team members may need, and how we approach actually creating a plan for hardware for your company. So before we start buying new computers for anyone, the first thing we want to do is an audit. We want to have a look at what are all the machines we have right now, how much RAM, how much disk space, what's the processors, to get a bit of an idea of what the landscape is across our business right now. Now, you can do this just by checking in with each one of your team members, putting everything on a big spreadsheet. Unfortunately, while there is basic information on the number of computers that have connected to your Google Workspace account, it doesn't give you the individual information like the specifications of machines when you access the devices menu from your Workspace admin panel. But what you can do is check in with each one of your team members, get them to run a basic hardware analysis app, and they can add each one of their specifications into your master spreadsheet, so you've got a big list of everything. From there, we're going to decide how much RAM, how much space each one of our users actually needs, and to do that, we're going to create something called user profiles. Now, this is what we used to do in the IT world when we had a large organization and we had different groups of users. Maybe we'd have one group of users which were executives, one group of users which were like managers, one group of users were maybe people working out on the road, maybe they were technicians, and we would effectively create a different profile for each type of user or each user type, and then with each one of those, we would be actually turning them into a defined set of hardware that would be most appropriate for that person in the business. So let's make it easy. Let's start with just 3 different types of users. The first ones we'll cover are your power users. So think executives, think anyone who needs to do something graphic intensive, like maybe video editing or image editing if it's happening locally on the computer. If you're using an online tool like Canva, less needs to happen on the actual local machine. But if you do want to have someone who needs to have 15 tabs open at one time because maybe they're a production manager and they've got lots of people that they're managing and they need to make sure everyone's staying on track, well, that would be someone who you may want to designate a power user. Executives are the kind of people who probably don't want to wait around for their computer to load anything, and maybe they're multitasking between lots of different things if they're also managing teams. So anyone who's an executive, I would also probably put in the power users group. Now, having the right ergonomics goes for anyone in your company, but specifically for power users, you want to make sure that they have a big screen, possibly even multiple monitors, although personally I find working with one big wide screen is best for me. I can have multiple windows and that works nicely for me. But you also want to make sure they have a nice and beefy computer. And although most computers these days are spec'd with 4 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, my personal preference for senior leaders in a business is that they have a machine that has at least 16 or maybe even 32 gigabytes of RAM if you want to go really crazy. Now, the reason for that is that people really love to keep lots of tabs open in Chrome, and I never want to see anyone slowed down by having to reload a tab or having to, re-log into a website because the tab has timed out. It also means that when you're doing things like opening applications, they're going to be nice and zippy. and you're never going to have to wait, especially if you're working with files like maybe on Google Drive, or if you're having a video meeting using Google Meet, and at the same time you're working on a document, then you're going to need additional oomph and additional energy that the computer would not normally have to have used before. In the old days when we were just running something like Microsoft Outlook on our computer, that would be a pretty simple application for your computer to run. But when we're live streaming video in and out of video calls, and we've got a large team and we're looking at 5 or 6 video streams simultaneously, and then maybe we've got a virtual phone system like Dialpad running on our computer as well, and we just don't want to ever run out of RAM, because that's when the computer starts to slow down and kind of jump a little bit. And if you're doing either video calls or phone calls from your computer, that's very quickly going to ruin the experience. So in terms of actual computer specs, apart from the RAM, you probably want to have at least an i7 or equivalent processor for your power users. You definitely want to make sure, where possible, to have a wired internet connection rather than wireless. My preference is always to go with wired, because even though Wi-Fi 6 is very fast for machines, as much as possible having a wired connection means that you're going to get just that little bit less latency, which is the speed it takes to get from your computer to the internet. And it's just one less thing to go wrong as well. Sometimes you get a little bit of interference with different devices. So my preference is always to have wired. Now, I think it'd be pretty hard to buy a computer these days without a solid state drive, but these are an absolute mandatory for your power users. You want to make sure that there are no delays to copying, moving files, or just any of the applications on your machine running anything less than excellent. Solid state drive, lots of RAM, i7 processor, and of course, good internet connection as well, means that you're going to have a good experience, and you want the absolute best experience for your power users. Okay, next up, let's talk about standard users. Now, this is the user profile for anyone who's not a power user. They're not necessarily frontline workers. We'll come back to those, but your standard users is kind of like everybody else in the business. Now, if you are running a company or a small business, you probably don't want to cheap out and go for like an i3 or equivalent processor. You want to stick to the i5 range. That's kind of like the middle of the road. And I really don't think 4 gigabytes of RAM is enough these days for a general worker. I would say 8 is still probably going to be the minimum. Ideally, 4 would be the absolute minimum if you're running something like Chrome devices, like a Chromebook or a Chrome box. Now, they're very efficient with RAM. I still would, as much as possible, recommend you try and go for 8 gigabytes or more of RAM, because that's just going to give someone the bandwidth to have a few more tabs open. But if you look at the actual roles and tasks that this staff person is doing, and they don't have more than 3 or 4 or 5 things open on any given day, 4 gig of RAM is probably going to be passable for a Chrome device, or 8 gigabytes for a Windows or a Mac device. Now, solid state drive here is not mandatory, but they're pretty much given these days. Most computers are coming with solid state, so that's a good idea. Yes, wired is always better than wireless internet. In all cases, that's always a good idea to have. Now, the one thing I wouldn't want to skimp on for anybody in my business is having a decent sized screen. Anytime I'm on a meeting and someone's screen sharing, and that person has to like scroll their way around a spreadsheet to see all of the cells, I want to scream, because, if they're using like a tiny little MacBook Air or something like that, and the screen is just so small that they can't even see their work, that just makes me go crazy, because all I can think of is, how long does this person spend scrolling every day just to see the information for them to be able to get their work done? So big screen is a must, no matter where anyone is in your company. If someone has to scroll, it is not going to work. And just the ability to bring up multiple screens, if you have to at some point cut and paste between 2 different pages, it just means that work is going to be a hell of a lot faster. And in small business, we are all about productivity and efficiency, aren't we? Category number 3 are your special users. So this kind of is the blanket for anyone else who may be in your business. So your policy may be for someone who is working outside of the business, maybe on the road, maybe it's someone operating a truck, or someone, going to your customers. Maybe they're a salesperson, or maybe they're a technician. It may be someone that accesses your business infrequently. It might be a contractor who helps support you in ways outside the business. Maybe it's a virtual assistant, or somebody that you've employed to support the business for a particular function. Now, these special roles, you can define them however you need to in terms of the specifications or the devices that they need. Are they operating on a tablet device maybe? Are they needing a device that has a touch screen? Are they needing a certain kind of management for their mobile device? We've got some other videos on the channel about mobile device management, how you can use Google Workspace to actually manage a fleet of mobile devices in your business. It's really important for you to sit down with each category of these users and ask them, okay, what is it exactly that you need to do your job? And then build a set of specifications for whatever devices they need around their job. And then each person who joins the business, you'll be able to share with them the updated list of specifications for that particular role based on which user category they fall into. And once we've done all of this, you're going to end up with 1, 2, 3 different user profiles, or possibly even more, where you keep things nice and documented. And then you have that as a system in your business that is going to make it easier for you and your team to administer managing devices for everyone in your company. So quick recap. First things first, we're going to audit exactly where our staff are at. We're going to set aside our different user profiles, and then we're going to document the process, start putting team members into those profiles, and then we're going to actually build that into a policy. Now, thankfully, inside Google Workspace, we can actually create some of these policies right inside of Workspace. For example, if you have someone using a Chrome device and you want to set a particular timeout period for how long they can use the device, or you want to configure a device as a kiosk device if it's in a particular location and you want to have it locked down so only certain actions can be taken on that device, all of this can be created and managed via Google Chrome policy. And so inside the policy manager, you do need to issue a device license to each device, but once a device license has been issued, you can actually manage and control those devices. If you have mobile phones or mobile devices connecting to your account, you can actually set a set of policies for those as well. Some of our favorite policies are to ensure there is a password set up for devices, ensuring that the devices have the correct authentication and security settings. So you can do things like enforce backups being encrypted. And if you have Android devices in your workforce, there's a whole range of devices that you can set on the individual phones and devices right from the admin panel. Go ahead and check that out, as well as check out some of our other videos on the channel on managing mobile devices inside Google Workspace. If you like this content, please hit subscribe and hit the bell notification so you can be notified when we go live or drop new content on the channel. Now, if you'd like to connect with us, hit us up on social media or join our free community group. All the links to that are right below this video. If you'd like to learn more about Google Workspace and the technology ecosystem, you can join our free Genius Academy by transferring your billing across to itGenius. Or you can join a Workspace Basics Bootcamp. Now, if you're a business owner and you're interested in an audit on your technology stack or your Workspace account, or you're looking to do a project in the tech world, well, you can take advantage of our free consultation. And if you need help right now, then consider joining Concierge or taking up a quick fix with our team for professional support for your tech stack.